State Senator Scott Brown, running for the United States Senate.
Great. So I guess my first question for you is sort of why are you running? And also, how do you plan to compete against a Democratic candidate in this heavily Democratic state as a Republican?
Well, let's take the first question first. I'm running because, very similar to why I was running almost 20 years ago as a municipal official, I wasn't happy with what was happening in my hometown. And I'm not happy with what's happening nationally right now. If you take what's happening in Massachusetts, the out-of-control spending, the high taxation, the 3 speakers been indicted, 2 senators resigned in disgrace, and then you take it up the food chain to what's happening nationally with the proposals that are being brought forth, cap and trade, which is a national energy tax, the health care bill, which clearly is not good for Massachusetts. It's going to result in higher taxes, lesser coverage along the lines, and $500 billion potentially in Medicare cuts. TRICARE for military is going to be cut. And my first priority is to look at if this bill is good for Massachusetts. And then you throw in a potential war tax, the expiring tax cuts for 2001 and 2003, which is an across-the-board tax increase. So I think that I certainly have a lot to offer people in Massachusetts to have a different way of looking at things, because we have 12 people right now who vote the same way, that beholden to the same special interests, and it's time to have somebody down there that's different and who's an independent thinker and voter.
Right. And what about going up against the Democrat in this heavily Democratic state?
I've won 9 or 10 races already, and I look forward to the challenge. I've always been the underdog. In the last election, I won by almost 20 points and had more votes than Kerry and Obama on almost every one of my towns. So I'm looking forward to the challenge, and you can certainly look at the numbers, and that's certainly one thing, but it's about dragging out the vote. And what I'm hearing from Democrats, independents, and unenrolleds, and Republicans alike, is that they're concerned about their wallets and pocketbooks. They're concerned about the out-of-control taxation and spending. If you look at just the items that Martha Coakley is pushing, it's almost $2.1 trillion over the next 5 years in extra taxation for us. If you couple that with the taxation we're having in Massachusetts, then how do people pay their bills? How do they pay their mortgage? How do they take care of their kids, bring them out, pay for their schooling? And there needs to be a line drawn in the sand, and people need to get involved and make a difference. And we're very excited about our possibilities.
Sure. What are some of those tax increases that she's proposing?
Well, actually, if you look at just the expiring tax cuts, 2001, 2003, that's, by those expiring, it's an across-the-board tax increase for every business and family in Massachusetts. For example, the child care tax credit, that'll be gone. The marriage penalty, that's coming back. A lot of the deductions that we take and a lot of the payments for, say, dividends, if you have seniors that are living on dividend income, those will be taxed at a higher marginal rate. That's almost $930 billion. And then I have higher health care costs. It's going to be between $2 and $3 trillion to pay for the care that we already receive here in Massachusetts. We know we need to reform pricing, but why would we throw our plan out and have a plan that's happening nationally being proposed that's going to be bad for Massachusetts businesses? I mean, look in Worcester with the fantastic medical facilities we have here. It's going to be hurting them. It's going to hurt doctors, nurses, research facilities, and I'm, for one, not in favor of it, especially at the cost of between $2 and $3 trillion. You take the cap and trade, which is a national energy tax. That's $233 billion extra dollars, and for the average family, it'll cost between $1,700 and $2,500. I was at Polar Beverages last week and a couple of other companies in Massachusetts, and they said, without even doing anything different, they would actually just turn on the switch and do the same exact thing as they're doing now. It would be between $5 and $6 million extra dollars. So how does that? Are they going to increase the cost of birch beer or root beer, which are my 2 favorites? Are they going to lay people off? So if you take the high Massachusetts taxes and the expiring tax cuts, the high corporate tax rates, the cap and trade, the health care, and everything else that's being proposed, how are companies like Polar going to be hiring, and how are they going to be vibrant members of the Worcester community?
Right. I wanted to ask you about the health care, because it seems like businesses are concerned about, if nothing is done, sort of insurance costs continuing to rise. So, I mean, how do you make reforms that don't put extra financial burdens on businesses and individuals?
Well, one of the things that we knew when we did healthcare a few years ago, that we needed to reform pricing. And that's where we're at now. We've done transportation, ethics, and pension reform. Now we have to do pricing reform. And one of the things we can look at mandates, managed care. Just the way we send out bills, we could save between 10 and 12% just by the way we do billing. Get modern with the times and use the internet instead of the old-fashioned mail system. So those are just small things that we can do. But to look at the difference between what's being proposed nationally and what we have here in Massachusetts, don't forget we were paying almost $1 billion to the hospitals to backfill the fact that citizens were going in and using the healthcare system and not paying their fair share. And what many companies and individuals now have, they have options and they have different types of programs that are available. And we realize that pricing reform is important. We can do that, but we don't need to do it at the cost of $2 to $3 trillion. We can actually do it for a far lesser amount and do it better, like we do a lot of things better in Massachusetts.
Sure. So in terms of pricing reform, you would be telling healthcare providers how much to charge? Or?
No. It's just by doing simple things. And once the delivery of how we do billing, looking at doing a top-to-bottom review of the entire medical plan that we have, and seeing what needs to be fixed. And some of the mandates, like for example, I don't need breast care coverage, but I have a plan that would require me to, even though men can get breast cancer, it's unlikely. So I should be able to tailor a plan that fits my needs and potentially at a lesser cost. Same with some of women's issues that they need them and they don't need some of the male issue coverage. There's simple things like that we haven't done yet. We need to look at reforming the product that we have to provide a more affordable and better streamlined product.
Sure. Okay. I wanted to ask you about the financial regulations and reforms as well. Obviously, we had this housing crisis and the stock market basically a crash. What's the best way to prevent that from happening again, while also not imposing new regulations that could hurt businesses?
Well, a lot of folks say it was the Wall Street crisis that led to everything. No, it wasn't. It was the housing crisis, which you rightly pointed out. The out-of-control lending, the lack of oversight in the housing market created this bubble that burst, and as a result, then the stock market, which was heavily invested into a lot of the bundling and sale of those mortgages overseas and throughout the country, and it just was a trickle-down effect. And you're talking about regulations. We have regulations. We need to provide the tools and resources to the agencies to enforce them. And I think it's very important to note that if there's an area where we need to fix it, then let's look at it. But to just re-regulate to the point where businesses especially and lenders don't know whether they go left or they go right, they need to make sure that they have a sound business plan, because one of the biggest things that I'm sensing when I go around the state that people are having is the fact that these larger lenders aren't lending. They're in a credit freeze, and that's a result of them not actually knowing which way is up. So we need to make sure that we don't over-regulate to the point where businesses become stagnant.